Hi, my name is Dan Castle. I'm a student in the Organizational Dynamics program at the University of Pennsylvania, and this is my story. I've been working in technology for the last 20 plus years, but before I did that, I was involved in a number of different work activities. I spent 6 years as an emergency medical technician in 2 cities across the state of New Jersey, and in doing so, learned some pretty valuable lessons that I'd like to share with you today. EMS is an interesting job. You're often thrust into the middle of huge problems at sometimes some of the people that you deal with at the worst moments of their life. And you're asked to really make order out of chaos. I can recall one scene rolling up on the highway of an overturned vehicle. There were multiple patients who had been ejected from the car, and there was a mother, a father, and 2 children. The mother and father were critically injured, but were more concerned about their children than they were about their own health. And I remember that scene very vividly because I had to treat not just the patient's physical well-being, but also their mental well-being. I think remembering that in the end, these people are in fact humans was an important lesson for me as a young man performing that task. The other thing I can remember vividly is despite all of your best efforts in an emergency medical services capacity, people are going to die. And it's not a reflection on who you are as a provider, but that's very difficult to maintain in the midst of a crisis. I remember being very on edge often, and oftentimes coming home from a long shift being upset. And specifically, again, I remember one scene where I was called to the scene of a homicide, and I remember again looking at the sort of status of the victim and really feeling crushed about it, really feeling sad about it. It is, of course, part of the natural cycle of life and death, but saying that and experiencing that are two completely different things. And so learning how to cope with that and learning how to take that back into your own personal life and realize that despite your best efforts, sometimes things just don't work out the way that you always want them to, I believe is an important lesson to be gleaned from that particular story. I also remember another vivid scene, which is when I was called to the scene of a shooting. There were 2 victims laying in the middle of the street. Both of them had been shot, presumably by one another. And when we arrived on the scene, we were the first ambulance on the scene, we began to treat those victims. And as soon as we did that, what we noticed almost immediately was there was a tremendous amount of hostility towards us as providers. Now that may sound strange, but if you think about the scene where you've got 2 folks from rival gangs, and this one happened to be a gang shooting, if person A is trying to kill person B, and now all of a sudden we're in the middle of that trying to save person B, we become part of the problem. So I think establishing the sense of duty and understanding what your role is without losing sight of the big picture and without losing sight of your surroundings is an important lesson that I gleaned from that. So that's my story. This is First Take for you, Vanessa. I'm sure I missed a lot of details, so I welcome your feedback.